You talk too much. You explain yourself to people who don't care. You argue with those who have already decided against you. And every time you speak, you give away a piece of your power. Today, I will show you the trick that kings, manipulators, and conquerors have always used. A weapon so quiet, it cuts deeper than words: silence. This is the dark psychology of silence. And before this video ends, you will understand how silence, when used correctly, can make others fear you, respect you, and even destroy themselves trying to interpret you. Most people are terrified of silence. The moment a conversation pauses, they rush to fill it. The moment someone questions them, they defend themselves. The moment tension rises, they speak because they believe words are protection. But Machiavelli knew the opposite is true, that silence, when mastered, is the most ruthless weapon of power. It is the tool of those who no longer need to prove themselves. The weak argue to be understood. The powerful remain silent and let the world interpret their stillness. When you speak, you reveal your thoughts, your emotions, your weaknesses. You expose the depth of your insecurity and the desperation for approval. Every word is a window into your mind, and those who listen can climb through it. But when you stay silent, no one knows where you stand. You become unreadable, unpredictable, and therefore untouchable. Silence makes others question what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you might do next. And that uncertainty breeds respect or fear. Machiavelli once observed that a ruler who speaks too freely invites rebellion. Because when people know your every thought, they know how to oppose you. But a silent ruler, a ruler who speaks rarely and with intention, becomes a mystery. His silence forces others to imagine his motives, and imagination is always more powerful than reality. In politics, as in life, perception is everything. Silence allows you to control that perception without saying a single word. Think about the last time someone questioned your intentions and you said nothing. The silence hung in the air like smoke, didn't it? They grew uneasy, confused. They wondered what you were hiding or what you knew that they didn't. That discomfort is power. Most people can't bear the weight of silence. They crumble under it. They start talking fast, explaining, apologizing, exposing more than they planned. Silence turns the battlefield of words into your advantage. It makes others fight ghosts while you conserve energy, waiting for the moment to strike. In the art of power, silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of control. Every great manipulator knows this. The interrogator who says nothing after your confession, letting you talk yourself into guilt. The negotiator who leans back in silence, watching you lower your own price just to break the tension. The leader who pauses before answering, making every word that follows sound like prophecy. The strategist understands that silence shapes the outcome before words are ever spoken. Machiavelli believed that silence is a mirror that reflects your enemy's desires and fears. When you are silent, they start projecting their thoughts onto you. They assume what you feel, what you believe, what you want, and in that assumption, they reveal themselves. You learn who fears you, who doubts you, who secretly admires you. Silence becomes your spy, gathering information without lifting a finger. But most importantly, silence is the language of self-mastery. It means you no longer need the validation that words bring. You are not reacting, you are observing. You do not chase approval. You command attention through stillness. To stay silent in moments of chaos requires discipline, strength, and the confidence of someone who knows his worth without needing to announce it. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, The one who says nothing stands out the most. People remember the quiet man more than the loud one. They wonder what he knows that they don't. They crave his opinion, his reaction, his acknowledgement, and in that craving, they give him their power. Machiavelli would say that true dominance begins when others start trying to decode your silence. So when others rush to defend, to argue, to prove their intelligence, hold your tongue. Let them drown in noise while you rule through calm. Because silence is not weakness. It is a strategy of the few who understand that words are for those still trying to be believed. But silence is for those who have already won. There is something unsettling about silence. When you expect a reaction and none comes, when you speak and the other person just looks at you, something inside begins to twist. That is the invisible power of silence. It doesn't attack you directly, it makes you attack yourself. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that people can defend themselves against words, but not against their own imagination. When you fall silent, the human mind does the rest. It begins to whisper, "Did I offend him? Did I expose too much? What is he planning?" And that is how silence becomes the most elegant form of psychological warfare. People crave certainty. They need to know what you think, where you stand, what you will do next. When you remove that certainty, when you refuse to give them an emotional map, they lose their balance. The silence becomes a mirror, reflecting their own fears back at them. Machiavelli would say that a single moment of silence can achieve more than 1,000 explanations, because people will create their own stories, and their stories are always more dramatic, more fearful, and more obsessive than the truth ever could be. When you stay silent, you plant doubt in their mind. Doubt is corrosive. It eats away at confidence, at peace, at certainty. Suddenly, they replay every word they said to you. They analyze your expressions, your pauses, your lack of reaction. They begin to chase clarity, and in that chase, you become the center of their thoughts. Silence doesn't just control attention, it controls emotion. You no longer have to fight for dominance. You occupy their imagination. Imagine a situation where someone insults you, expecting anger, retaliation, or justification. But you respond with nothing, no expression, no words, just silence. Watch what happens. The power shifts immediately. Their insult loses its meaning. They start doubting their own words. They begin to feel small, nervous, exposed. They wonder if they've made a mistake. That is the invisible revenge of silence. It makes the other person destroy themselves from the inside out. Machiavelli knew that silence was a tool of manipulation used by the powerful. He studied rulers who would sit quietly in meetings while their enemies spoke endlessly. The longer the ruler stayed silent, the more those around him revealed. They thought the silence was agreement or disapproval, so they adjusted their speech, exposing their intentions without realizing it. The ruler didn't need spies. Silence itself was his informant. The moment you speak less, people start confessing more. They speak to fill the tension you create, and in doing so, they give away the very secrets you seek. But the power of silence is not just in fear, it's also in curiosity. Humans are addicted to answers. When they don't understand something, they can't rest. Your silence makes them chase your approval, your thoughts, your next move. They'll start imagining what you think of them, and imagination is a dangerous thing. It makes people emotional, reactive, and desperate. You, meanwhile, stay calm, composed, detached, appearing wiser, more mysterious, more in control. This is why Machiavelli advised rulers to speak little and listen much. He understood that the more one talks, the more predictable he becomes. The less he speaks, the more others project greatness onto him. Silence is the canvas upon which others paint your image. If you stay silent long enough, they'll invent qualities you never had: intelligence, strength, mystery, wisdom. And when people start idealizing you, they become easier to manipulate because they're no longer reacting to who you are. They're reacting to who they think you are. In every confrontation, silence is a test of power. The impatient reveal their weakness. The calm reveal their control. The person who cannot tolerate silence will always lose to the one who can, because the one who stays quiet holds the strings of the other's emotions. The silence becomes a stage, and the other person performs upon it, unaware that they're already being directed. Machiavelli would say, "Let silence speak for you. It's louder than any defense, sharper than any insult, and heavier than any argument." The powerful don't waste words. They let others stumble in the echo of their own noise, while they remain the enigma no one can fully understand. And as long as you remain unreadable, you remain untouchable. There is a strange thing that happens when you stop talking. When you stop reacting, explaining, or justifying, the world around you begins to change. People become uneasy. The air grows heavier. Their minds start racing. And in that uneasy silence, something remarkable happens. They begin to reveal themselves. Machiavelli understood this truth better than anyone. When you remain silent, people will speak to fill the void. They'll talk, explain, confess, and in their attempt to control the silence, they expose their true intentions. Silence is not passive. It is an active force that pulls truth out of others without you having to ask for it. Most people are uncomfortable with silence because it exposes what they're hiding. When there's no noise to distract them, their mask begins to slip. You'll notice it: a nervous laugh, restless movement, over-explaining. They start revealing emotions they meant to bury, opinions they meant to conceal. Machiavelli observed that in any interaction, the one who speaks less is always in control. The talker is busy proving, while the listener is busy learning. The moment you fall silent, the balance of power shifts. Imagine a debate, an argument, or even a negotiation. The other person wants a reaction. They push, provoke, and wait for you to respond. But when you don't, when you simply listen, they begin to feel exposed. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing them to look at their own motives. They start to talk more, trying to justify themselves, trying to fill the empty space your silence created. And the longer you stay quiet, the more they reveal, not because you asked, but because they cannot bear the tension of being unread. Machiavelli knew that silence was a form of interrogation. It makes the guilty confess and the proud over-explain. Silence has a way of turning the loudest people into the most vulnerable. They think control comes from dominating the conversation, but that's a lie. Control comes from observation. Every word they speak becomes a clue. Their tone, their phrasing, the topics they avoid, all of it reveals what they fear and what they want. You don't need to argue with them. You don't need to win the conversation. Just let them speak, and they'll hand you their strategy piece by piece. Machiavelli would say that silence is the battlefield of the mind, and the one who can endure it the longest wins without fighting. In politics, silence was Machiavelli's favorite disguise. He wrote that a prince must learn to listen more than he speaks because every word from others is intelligence, a resource. The more his enemies talked, the less he needed spies. They would expose their alliances, their anxieties, their weaknesses, simply because they couldn't handle not being understood. When you are silent, you make others talk to prove themselves to you. They want your approval, your validation, your reaction. and they will unknowingly reveal everything just to earn it. In your daily life, this power works the same way. When someone lies, remain silent. They will rush to explain themselves again and again until the truth leaks out between their words. When someone tries to provoke you, say nothing. They'll grow frustrated and show their true emotions, because silence makes people reveal their nature. The liar becomes desperate, the manipulator becomes loud, and the insecure become defensive. All you have to do is hold the silence long enough for them to reveal who they really are. The brilliance of silence lies in what it does to human psychology. We all crave acknowledgement. When someone listens but says nothing, it feels like judgment, like disapproval, like danger. That pressure becomes unbearable, and the talker starts to overcompensate. They speak too much, reveal too much, give away more than they ever planned. Machiavelli would say that silence is the art of making others write their own confession while believing they're still in control. You simply become the canvas, and they paint themselves on it. Silence also has another hidden power. It tests loyalty. When you fall silent in a group, when you stop sharing, you'll quickly see who starts talking behind you. You'll see who grows uncomfortable, who distances themselves, who begins to question you. The silent man doesn't need to interrogate, he just observes. The reactions around him tell him everything he needs to know. Silence exposes truth faster than confrontation ever could. Even in personal relationships, silence holds incredible strength. When you stop reacting emotionally, you shift the balance. The manipulative partner loses control because they can no longer feed off your responses. The friend who constantly seeks validation begins to feel insecure. The person who lies starts talking in circles. Silence forces clarity, not through aggression, but through patience. Machiavelli knew that the most dangerous person in any room is not the one who talks the most, but the one who listens the most. Because the listener gathers information, interprets motives, and waits for the perfect moment. The silent observer never exposes himself, never reveals what he knows, and never plays his hand too early. That restraint gives him power that others willingly hand over, because they can't stand not knowing what he's thinking. The truth is, silence is not emptiness. It's control disguised as passivity. It's a strategy hiding behind calm. And the more you practice it, the more people expose themselves around you without realizing it. They'll tell you their fears, their weaknesses, their desires, their loyalties, because they think silence means you're harmless. But Machiavelli knew that silence was the calm before dominance. The one who speaks less observes more. The one who listens learns everything, and the one who masters silence eventually masters people. Silence is powerful, but power without control is a weapon that can turn against its master. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. Silence can elevate you above others, make you mysterious, and command respect. But if you wield it without precision, it can also isolate you, make you forget, or even make others fill the silence with their own narrative. The art is not in silence alone, but in knowing when to break it. There is a rhythm to power, a timing that separates the manipulator from the master. Those who remain silent too long fade into the background, but those who speak too quickly lose the fear they once inspired. The balance is ruthless. It demands you to know when to disappear and when to strike. Imagine a ruler who never speaks. Over time, his people stop fearing him. They start imagining weakness, uncertainty, even cowardice. Silence that lingers too long becomes a void, and a void invites others to fill it. Machiavelli warned that nature abhors a vacuum in politics, in power, in relationships. When you say nothing for too long, Others begin to speak for you, to define your motives, your position, your character. That's when silence becomes dangerous, not for others, but for you. The art, therefore, lies in timing your silence with surgical precision. Remain quiet when emotion rules the room, and speak when your words can carve through the noise like a blade. Machiavelli believed that the strongest rulers used silence to build tension. They allowed fear and curiosity to grow, and just when their absence became unbearable, they spoke, not with many words, but with decisive ones. A single statement, after a long silence, could move armies, shatter alliances, and change history. Because when you remain silent long enough, people assign immense weight to every word you finally choose to speak. The scarcity gives your voice value. The less you speak, the more your words echo. The less you appear, the more your presence is missed. This is the paradox of silence. The fewer words you use, the louder their impact. But here is where most people fail. They think silence alone will save them, that withholding words automatically grants power. It doesn't. Strategic silence works only when followed by precise, purposeful speech. It's the tension that creates the effect. The silence builds curiosity, and your words release it. Without the strike, the silence is meaningless. Think of it as drawing a bow. The silence is the pull, the gathering of pressure, and your words are the arrow. If you never release it, the tension fades and the power is wasted. But if you release too soon, the shot is weak. Power comes from knowing when the silence has done its work, when the other side has grown impatient, fearful, desperate, and that's when you speak. In every negotiation, every conflict, every manipulation, there is a moment when silence must turn into voice. Machiavelli would say that a prince who never speaks becomes invisible, but one who speaks without restraint becomes predictable. To lead, to influence, to dominate, you must master both. Silence is for gathering power, speech is for using it. One without the other is imbalance. When you speak after silence, your words must carry purpose, a command, a revelation, a decision. It's not about talking, it's about timing. Think of the generals who hold back their armies, letting the enemy tire themselves out. The field grows quiet, the tension unbearable, and then, at the perfect moment, they strike. That's how silence should be used as a preparation for decisive impact. You don't speak to fill space. You speak to end the game. Machiavelli admired leaders who understood this rhythm. Caesar, who used silence to observe and patience to plan, but struck with words and action that made history tremble. You see, the power of silence is multiplied only when your eventual speech feels inevitable, unstoppable, and final. In your own life, this balance is the difference between respect and neglect. In a confrontation, stay silent until emotions fade. Let others reveal their hand, but when you speak, do not ramble or explain. Say what matters with calm authority, and let your words end the discussion. In relationships, remain quiet when provoked. Silence disarms the emotional, confuses the manipulative. But when the time comes to assert boundaries, speak clearly, coldly, and without apology. The longer your silence before the statement, the stronger the statement becomes. Machiavelli saw silence as a test of self-discipline. Anyone can speak when provoked, few can wait. But he also saw speech as the mark of a leader. To remain forever silent is not power, it is fear disguised as wisdom. The difference lies in control. The powerful man uses silence to read the room, to study faces, to hear truths that others miss. But once he has gathered what he needs, he uses his words like a weapon, sharp, deliberate, final. His silence was the storm gathering. His words are the lightning that follows. You can see this dynamic in every sphere of influence. The skilled negotiator sits through the entire discussion without saying a word, letting the other side talk themselves into weakness. And then, with a single statement, he closes the deal in his favor. The powerful boss listens quietly during meetings, revealing nothing, letting others expose their intentions. But when he finally speaks, everyone listens because they know his silence meant calculation. The strategist in any setting uses silence to set the stage and words to bring the act to a close. To master silence is to master tension. To master speech is to master release. You must learn both. There is a rhythm between the two that defines every game of power. Machiavelli knew that silence without purpose is emptiness, but silence with intention is dominance. It allows others to reveal themselves, to underestimate you, to walk into the trap of their own assumptions. And when your words finally come, they don't just fill the air, they end the silence, and with it, the illusion of equality. Power is not found in constant talking or in endless quiet. It is found in the space between them, the pause before the command, the silence before the strike, the stillness before the storm. Machiavelli would tell you that men who cannot endure silence will always rush to fill it, and men who cannot break silence will always fade away. The ruler, the manipulator, the strategist, he lives in between. He knows when to withhold and when to reveal, when to vanish and when to dominate, when to listen and when to deliver the final word that no one dares to challenge. Silence is not weakness. It is the highest form of control, a weapon of the wise, a shield of the powerful, and a mirror that exposes every soul that stands before it. Machiavelli understood that words can be manipulated, twisted, and forgotten, but silence cannot. Silence lingers. It infects the mind. It makes people reveal, fear, and obey without ever being commanded. In a world that glorifies noise, where everyone rushes to speak, explain, and prove, the one who can remain silent stands apart. He becomes a mystery others try to solve, a force they can't predict, and a presence they can't ignore. Silence makes your enemies nervous, your rivals uncertain, and your allies attentive. It forces everyone around you to play the game on your terms. But the true power of silence lies not only in withholding words. It lies in mastering when to use them. Silence gathers power, words release it. Stay silent to learn, to measure, to let others expose themselves. Then, when the moment comes, speak with precision. Let your words fall like thunder after a long storm. Machiavelli would remind you that power doesn't always shout. Often it whispers. Sometimes it says nothing at all. The man who controls his tongue controls the room. The one who commands silence commands perception. And in the end, the world always bows, not to the loudest voice, but to the quietest mind that knows exactly when to break the silence.